living and learning, adapting. That's just what we do. And I think that's why we're finding success, because we adapt.
Welcome back, everybody. Rich Brugger here with Jeff Rotmeyer of ImpactHK and the Love 21 Foundation. Jeff, do me a little favor. Tell me about yourself, the work that you're doing here in Hong Kong.
Yeah, my name is Jeff Rotmeyer. So I'm the founder of Impact Hong Kong and also Love 21 Foundation, so two different NGOs. Both are about a year and a half old now, registered. And Impact Hong Kong is working with the homeless community, and Love 21 Foundation works with the Down syndrome and autistic community, specifically in sport and nutrition.
Okay, so you started two nonprofits at the exact same time. What were you thinking? Why do two at the same time?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, a lot of people questioned me, they said, Jeff, you're nuts, and they were right, definitely right on that. See, the problem was that, and it was a good problem, is that we really found a way to help these two communities that was not being done in Hong Kong. And we really saw, with Down syndrome and autism, we saw how sport and nutrition, really is key. Okay. And if you looked at the homeless community, we saw how through friendship being the key element, we could really empower people for change. So it would have been a real shame to just leave one of those knowing that you could really save lives.
Okay. How did you get into this? What was you've been in Hong Kong for 13 years now. What got you into this, and why did you decide to make the full jump?
Yeah, early on in Hong Kong, I jumped into just doing some initiatives on my own, working with refugees, asylum seekers, creating a football program for them. Then that led into working with the Down syndrome community. It was basically a step-by-step, and it's just been, looking back now, it's been an incredible organic kind of wave, just piece by piece, that's just taken us to where we are now. Never would have imagined being an NGO founder. Yeah. If you would have told me that, about 10 years ago, I'd been like, I'd probably just laughed, But it really has been a step by step, and that's been, it's been a beautiful experience for sure.
You're about 18 months old, 2.5 years as a formal organization. How did you get started? Why did you decide to actually register charities versus work with other organizations and help them?
I originally tried working with other organizations. I find both of those organizations that I worked with, I learned a lot, and I saw how they do incredible work, but I just saw how they were so limited in what they actually were shooting for. And I think with both of our charities, we shoot for the stars. An example of that is just recently we got an elderly lady. So I was leaving our guest room space around 11:30 p.m. and I saw this lady that we've been serving on the street for quite a while. I never would have imagined she was homeless. She was about, I think she's 80, an 80-year-old woman, very similar to the ladies around us here. And she was just about to put her head down in this garden. And I never knew she was sleeping there. We just assumed that she had a house. And I saw her sleeping there. That the next morning I got my team, we went there, we spoke to her, and that night we got her into a hotel.
Wow.
So we got her into a hotel, which was about, about 900. It was about finding a place that she trusted us because we'd been serving her on the street for a while.
Yeah.
Okay, so she knew who we were. She knew that we cared, first and foremost. We got her into that hotel, and we had her there for a few nights. And then in that time, we started thinking about, okay, how are we going to make this next step? She had no ID, completely alone, no idea where her family is at all. It was a very difficult situation, and also for her as an elderly lady like that to trust us to go into a space, it was difficult. Had to have a lift from the ground floor, etc., etc. We put her in a hotel, and we've had her in that hotel for about 3 weeks.
Wow.
Okay, which is a very substantial amount of money, and just last week we got her into an apartment now on a 6-month lease, and through Airbnb.
Wow.
I know. And now we've got her registered, we've got her an ID, we've got her getting health checks, we've got her applying for social housing for the first time. And if you think about that, as a charity, we acted instantly on it. We got her in, got her safe, no more sleeping on the street. And I really honestly think that we would be the only charity in Hong Kong that would have done it and been successful in doing that with her. I mean, this is a lady who was a street cleaner for 20 years before. Wow. So Yeah, I'm really proud of that. As a charity, we have to keep that. This is a problem. We solve the problem.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we think about the most strategic way to solve it. And we're not afraid of, government regulations and stuff like that so much.
How did you get into this to begin with? Like, what was your stepping stone to even get involved in community service? How far back does it go? Is this like back when you were a kid? Is it back your mom taught you? Like, how did you get into community service?
I worked in Vancouver, where I'm from, Vancouver, Canada, I volunteered for a charity. Basically, I was teaching basketball to youth at risk, so kids, teenagers that fell into tough times, gangs, drugs, alcohol, etc. And we used basketball as the connection. So instead of me going up to some teenager who's probably has trust issues, anger issues, etc., instead of me trying to force myself on that kid, like, hey, listen to me, I'm your mentor. Right. Instead, we just played basketball together. Right. And when you do that, you create a trust in a indirect way, and you create friendship in an indirect way. And then once you have that built, once you're friends and playing basketball together, then that opens the door to other things like possible mentorship, possible having good conversations and building trust, opening up friendships, etc. And that was my first experience. And I think that's why I really think sport.
So as an entrepreneur, you can often be very lonely. What's the community that you draw off of to kind of keep yourself distracted, keep yourself focused?
I'm blessed with a huge community of just constant support. Okay. It's overwhelming. It really can be very overwhelming because I have such incredible support.
So you have a community within your own organization that keeps you kind of uplifted.
Yeah.
Do you have a community of other entrepreneurs, of other social entrepreneurs, of other nonprofit leaders that you're regularly meeting with to learn from, to bat ideas around, to complain about, whatever it may be? Like, do you have that mentor group that, from an organizational standpoint, that you can draw off of?
I do. Okay. I just don't have the time to meet them. I think that was something that I would love to have. I think that'd be great, because there's so many people in Hong Kong. There's a lot of, once in a while we're connected, but mainly through Facebook.
So then how do you learn as an entrepreneur? Like, how do you, as an individual, grow? Not just, from the volunteer base, but really look at your organizations, learn how to take the next steps. Like, where are you drawing that knowledge from, or where are you drawing that experience from?
Just winging it. Yeah, really just winging it. I think, I've got a lot to learn, and I'm open to that. I think that's key. I come from a teaching background. Okay. So I find that, my teaching experience has really been a good stepping stone to what I'm doing now in managing, in organizing, managing groups of people, in planning activities, in communicating well. I find that those are key things that, teachers have to be quite well-rounded. And I think that was a really good stepping stone for me. And I think, but I definitely have a lot to learn, for sure.
It gives you a lot of patience teaching, right?
I would think so.
And also resilience.
Yeah. True.
What is your proudest moment to date for ImpactHK? Like, what's the moment that you're like, this is it, we did it?
Well, I think that first one, you met the mother that came here earlier with her son. I think that was the first family, the first individuals we got off the street, and it was actually in this neighborhood. And when we did that, at that time the husband and wife were homeless, living on a footbridge. They'd lost their son, and that, when we got them into a home and then started making the steps to get the son back, which was quite a process. When we did that, and now you saw the son today, you saw him lively and happy and really sweet. I think that really was the kicker, like, wow, we can actually do this. And I wouldn't say pride in a way wasn't really what I felt. I felt excitement. I felt like this is really going to work, and we need to now attack. And since then we've really attacked. And that was, so that was pretty exciting.
What are 3 things you're doing now that will set the organization up for 5 years from now?
I think number one, education. So getting into schools. I think it's a very smart play in that. Number one, it's great for the future of Hong Kong.
Yeah.
These kids are getting so much from it. They're learning about societal issues. They're learning about the poor, how to help them rather than just point at them,
Yeah.
rather than just feed them. They're learning how friendship and empathy are important to empower people. So the education system there, getting in there is smart. So I think as a charity, that really is a big push that we want to make on an entrepreneurial side to get into schools. I think it works perfectly with us. Taking our walks on another angle, we have too many volunteers. So that's a great problem to have, but it is a problem we need to focus on. So we need to create more opportunities, more locations, getting more walk leaders to get out on the streets even more. That'll be a big side. And also, moving, our next big step will be in going into more of the counseling, drug rehabilitation, sports, nutrition side. So, we're going to be focused mainly on, getting a new center, which will have a counseling room and a sports area where we can really attack. And I think those three things really are on our radar. I would say probably within the next year.
You're looking to open up a new center. That requires a significant, probably, amount of funding, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Where's that funding coming from? Like, if you look at your buckets that are going to pour in, what are the major buckets, and how do you develop that fundraising strategy?
Time is our biggest issue right now. It's in actually making applications for funding, it just takes a significant amount of time that we don't have. I have had great help from a nice lady who's been helping us with funding applications.
Okay.
We have our walks, which enable us to be quite self-sufficient in terms of our cost. Going for the big picture of getting a new center would take a big funder.
Right.
I've got one line out there in the sea, and hopefully it will come in. I'm optimistic about it, but it might not, and then we'll have to attack bigger funding for that.
And is that from a corporate, from an individual, government? Like where?
That would be from a corporate.
Okay.
HSBC have sponsored our existing center for 2 years, which was just under $1 million Hong Kong dollars.
Okay.
So that was a big one for us. That was our first real big break, where it gave us a real optimism to be able to, we're going to be good 2 years, we're solid. Let's now attack this next initiative of the counseling center. Because if we can do that, I mean, just to be frank, we've taken 23 people off the streets. Next week it'll be 24. 24 people off the streets that are all doing well. We haven't had one person that is just completely fallen down and is back to being homeless. So it's really working. And to be frank, we're not ready. We don't have our counseling program where we want it to be. We don't have our sports where we want it to be. We don't have our nutrition program and mentorship program where we want it to be. So the future for us really looks bright. If we can strengthen those systems up, we'll be solid.
So is that your focus then, to strengthen on those systems before you go any larger? And
before we go larger than we are now.
Okay.
Yeah, before we go into the job creation aspects and stuff like that. Yeah. Like right now we have those programs. We do have a sports class every day. We do have mentorship. They're just not good enough. We want to strengthen that all up, get everything tight.
Now, if you got into the corporate world to say, well, done is better than perfect. So do you need the perfect curriculums? Are you happy to go and experiment? And on what level are you happy to play around with these systems until they're really ready?
Yeah, that's what we're doing. We're just, you live and learn is what we've done here. I knew nothing about homelessness when I started this. I knew nothing about Down syndrome and autism, when I started this. Just living and learning, adapting. That's just what we do. And I think that's why we're finding success, because we adapt.
You didn't know anything about homelessness. You're not from necessarily a background in this space, and you're a foreigner in this city who doesn't speak the local language. What qualified you to start this? And what's the long-term vision for your organization? Like, are you going to try and build a local capacity? Like, how are you going to make sure this thing lives well beyond you and grows into that space?
Yeah, those are great challenges. Luckily, with both. I think because our volunteer base is so strong and so dedicated and so passionate. That's what enabled me to be able to do this. Not speaking the language, et cetera, et cetera. So that volunteer base. In the future, for it to be self-sustainable, it needs to be less of me and more of our systems in place. And I think we're always going to find people that want to give in Hong Kong. You're always going to find people that want to be involved and engaged in helping. So if you can create the opportunity, I think that will flow through. The less that I have to play a role in ImpactHK in the future, which makes me sad to say because I want to. I really love doing this. But yes, for longevity's sake, we have to think of ways that makes it less reliant on one person and more of a team.
What's a story that you keep in your mind of someone's life that you want to influence or that you already have influenced?
6 months ago, I met a gentleman living in a garden, very near our center. And it was not a cold night. It was a wet night, and he was sleeping on cardboard, and he's basically covered in about 300 mosquitoes. Right, and this is a park where I know there's drug use, there's stealing. It's not a safe place to be, and nobody would want to sleep there at all. This gentleman was sad. He was alone. He had no family. He's just completely alone. Right, every single day, trying to survive in this garden. And this same individual, in I think 5 days' time, is going to be leaving us. He's got a full-time job working for a pizza company. He has an apartment he pays the rent for. He plays sports with us. He's eating well. He's sleeping well. He's happy. He has a good friend now that's another community helper that we have. And you look at that. That's a 6-month period, right? And when I ask I ask students, because we work in schools, as I've said, when I ask students, I say, well, what do you think the reason is? What was the special ingredient in this that really enabled that transformation? These kids aren't jumping up and saying, money! Hong Kong has a big surplus. They're not saying that because that makes no sense. But, that's a story of how, as a charity, we're very unique. And we focus on that real love, kindness, and friendship to empower these people. And I think that's why, as a charity, we can keep hold of that. We can't lose that. So that's our niche, and we need to really attack that.
What are 3 things that an up-and-coming entrepreneur in this space should keep in mind before getting started?
I think, one, if you want to create this has been a movement, right? This has been an organic movement that started from step 1. And I think, number 1, understanding that in taking that first step, you don't have to hit a home run right away. You by just taking a step towards something that you're passionate about, something you care about, and then being willing to learn, being willing to adapt, I think is a really key part. In creating a movement, I think the reason I was able to do it is because I had a very, very strong wingman, a very, very strong friend who I could bounce ideas off of, who when I fell down, maybe I was sick or maybe I was busy, he could step up. Right. You need that person. You cannot attack a thing like this on your own. It just doesn't work. If you don't have that one person, I think you'd really find it difficult to find success. And I know I wouldn't have been successful if I didn't have that person on my side. And that person, maybe that person at one point had to go and then another person stepped in. So if I were to give advice, that would be it. I would think you would, don't be afraid to take a step to try, right? And don't feel like you have to hit a home run. But then also really find somebody as a partner who's really strong, that you can trust, you can bounce ideas off of at least. And I think that's probably good advice.
Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.